I and a few others. So we set up the charity in 8 weeks, and
Wow.
then the conversation said, who's gonna run the program? So then that's where the role came for me.
You were the only one left sat in the room.
Yeah.
And they went, it'll be you.
Pretty much. Yeah, so it's kind of looking around, and a few, there's a few rumblings of, Chev, you might potentially get to run this program, and then it happened. So then there's a bit of negotiation between the Surrey Cricket Foundation, the charity arm of the club who I was working for, and the county club and Sport England, and then it was decided that I'd be the director of programs, and I just thankful with everything that's going on this year, the past year or so, to still have an opportunity to progress and develop my career in something that I'm really, really passionate about. And it's exciting. Like, we launched in October as the independent charity, and I'd started on the 1st of December with my new role as director of programs, and it's been quite full on, juggling all the different stuffs with the lockdowns and everything else. And we went as soon as we could get back out in December. We had 3 sessions before Christmas with the current scholars that we've got on the program. And then, we had plans to do some more stuff this month, and we was going to have another open day in February. And, we launched in Birmingham this month as well. And, due to like everything else, it's kind of been put a little bit on the back burner, but there's still a lot of things, going on and taking place. So, just excited.
We'll come along and we'll talk about all of those things in good order, I think. So Ebony Rainford-Brent is chair of the charity, isn't she? Was she directly involved in your appointment?
Yeah, she was. She kind of founded the program. There was a few people at the time actually having a lot of separate discussions, but Ebony kind of pulled it all together and kind of led from the front on this. And she, I've known Ebony for quite a number of years now, and as we was kind of working on the bid and putting everything together, and as everything landed, she was quite pivotal in having the confidence in me, putting my name forwards to be director of the program. So I'm thankful that she saw something in me and other people at Surrey, like Richard Gould, the chief exec, and my ex-employer Chris Coleman at the foundation, all saw something in me and believed in me, and that I could be the director and take this charity forward. So just positive, and can't thank them enough for
that's fantastic. Great for you and great for them. Let's ask another simple question, just for everyone's understanding. We have a very international audience, not just the UK, I might obviously. So it's a fairly simple one. ACE, is it an acronym? I could see African Caribbean potentially in there. Is it just a statement of intent? Tell us about ACE, the word itself in this context.
Do you know what, Tony? It's a bit of both, if I'm honest. It started off as the African Caribbean Engagement Program, and that's what ACE stands for. And I remember we was in a meeting, and I kind of just said, how can we simplify it a little bit, and that's where ACE came. But Ebony and I talk a lot about accelerated change. So with ACE as well, we use ACE as accelerated change empowerment. So we want to move things forward as quickly as can and empower the young people that we work with to fulfill the potential that they have. So yes, it's an acronym, and yes, it's a statement. I want one day to hopefully everyone will determine the name ACE as part of our program, and not just a serve and tennis
or a card.
Or a card, yeah.
but yeah, I get. It's funny though, because when I looked at multiple articles about you and social media and your own sites, because you got a lovely section on the Kia Oval Surrey site, but then that links to the charity site. You don't ever actually use the 3 words in full, or if you do, I missed it. So that's why I asked that. It's
very rare. It's very rare. I think it's just to simplify it a little bit. But I just want get to a point where everyone knows that it stands for African Caribbean.
Well, the mission statement, bold and clear and absolutely restated everywhere, is supporting diverse talent from grassroots to the elite. And you kind of, I think, cite 3 objectives within that. So to sort of get everyone kind of understanding where we are and what we're talking about, I'm going to read those out, if you don't mind. But then perhaps we'll go back to them one at a time, and you can tell us what's going on behind those and what some of the success measures are. So, supporting diverse talent from the grassroots to the elite. And we're sitting within that 3 big objectives, which are building grassroots programs, talent pathways, and a better ID within black communities. Providing elite academy programs and scholarships to talented players, allowing them to fulfill their potential. And the development of a diverse coaching and volunteer scheme through targeted training and mentor programs. So that's a pretty clear agenda of things to be done. Let's look at them one at a time. Maybe the first one, building grassroots programs, talent pathways, and talent to open up to the black community opportunity. Tell us a bit more what's behind that and what's been happening and how you're doing.
Yeah, so for us, we know there's talent out there in the black British communities, and we've seen other sports excel in that. Football's got a high number, rugby recently, athletics, other sports have captured that talent. So for us, there's a long history, I guess, with the black community with cricket, going back to the Caribbean and Africa, and we just want to try re-engage that. And to do that, we're unfortunately we're at a stage where we have to infuse and find the talent out there, and by doing that we have to go to where they are. So we've got a school program that we plan to roll out, and going into and setting up community hubs, and just being an access point. So we've got to really try and get to where the kids go, working with schools and youth clubs and community groups, and
welcome back to Guerrilla Cricket's coverage of the 2021-22 Men's Ashes. You join us just at the end of a tea break on day 1 of Hobart's first ever day-night test match, Hobart's first ever Ashes test match, and it's been a day of fast-forward test cricket. England took 3 wickets in the first 40 minutes or so to reduce Australia to 12 for 3, with both David Warner and Stephen Smith gone for ducks, but then a counter-attack started by Marnus Labuschagne and taken on for his second 100 of the series by Travis Head, with good support from Cameron Green, as England shed bowlers with Ollie Robinson injured and Chris Wokes and Mark Wood very ineffective. Has Australia 215 for 5 at tea. I'm Knuckle Pandey, taking you through the first half an hour of the final session, this long final session, likely 2.5 hours worth, and I'm joined by Ian Forth and, judging by his new haircut, John the Baptist Batham. Welcome, friends. If you could unmute yourselves.
Yes, I think I'm good to go. Very nice to see you, Knuckle. Less good to see the scorecard. How are you going, John?
Yeah, not bad. Morning, gents. Yeah, not quite the scorecard we were looking for, particularly at 12 for 3.
Yeah, England won the toss and put Australia in. Both captains said they would have bowled, but the pitch had actually played pretty true. The ball's coming onto the bat nicely. You can drive through the line, and once that early movement settled down, the ball really hasn't done anything. You wonder if both captains got a bit seduced by the greenness of the surface. Certainly, Broad and Robinson were moving the ball around all over the place, but it is a worry that for England with this walking wounded 4-seamer attack that only Stuart Broad appears to be both fit and bowling well at the same time. Joe Root's already had to bowl 10 overs so far, and it wouldn't be a huge surprise if Darvin Milan bowled. If you're just joining us and weren't aware of the team news, James Anderson wasn't deemed fit to play in this game. They were worried he wouldn't get through the 5 days with a bit of just general knackeredness, I think, after some long hours in the field over this series. Jack Leach was left out. Ben Stokes has a side strain that he picked up in Sydney and isn't able to bowl, so it's a 4-bowler attack of Stuart Broad and Ollie Robinson, who both bowled very well and taken 2 wickets. Chris Wokes, who took the one slightly lucky wicket of Travis Head, and Mark Wood, who's been superb in this series but has bowled all over the place so far today. Cameron Green on 57 off 85, his second consecutive 50 after a lean start to the series, will face Alex Carey, who needs probably needs a score, is on 1. Stuart Broad's going to start from the Church Street end after tea, and here are those jingles.
We are the Cameron Green Appreciation Society. God save Mitchell Marsh's brand of all-round variety. We are the Cameron Green Preservation Society. His injuries cause all of us excessive anxiety.
Sweep the leg, Brody. Got the best headband around. Something has gotta keep her down. Got the best headband around. Your ego ain't gonna beat you down. Got the best headband around. Even though your hair is thin now.
Comes Broad, right arm over the wicket to the right-handed Cameron Green, who pushes to Chris Wokes at mid-wicket, and there is no run. The lights are fully on in Hobart. We're going to 11 p.m. local time. With the slight extension to the day's play to make up for the half-hour delay to the start of play due to a little bit of rain, but we haven't had any weather adversely affect the game since. 2 slips in place and a sort of shortish extra cover as well for Broad to Green. This is outside off stump and left alone by Cameron Green through to the keeper. There is no run. England really did let the game get away from them before lunch, and then particularly after lunch, John.
Yeah, well, I think as you say, with doubts over the fitness of Ollie Robinson and Broad being the only one that's really managed to have any kind of a line, you're always going to struggle, aren't you?
Broad in. Full delivery, driven nicely by Green to mid-on, who picks up and hurls towards Sam Billings, who kept tidily and moved well behind the stumps, but they come through for an easy single, bringing Alex Carey onto strike.
I mean, I think the other thing you have to say is
Alex Carey is his name. Wicket keeping is his stride. He's not bad with the blade. Only a cricket bat.
He hasn't been the man with the blade much in this series so far, but who knows? He's capable of unfurling a few. But I think we have to say that it was a magnificent innings from Travis Head, and Cameron Green is now showing what the Australian selectors have been expecting with the bat. I think in the last couple of innings.
Broad not going round the wicket to the left-hander as he normally does. Gets this one to jag in a little bit to Carey from over the wicket. Carey defends watchfully into the offside. Yes, second time in the series Travis Head has played a fantastic counter punch, and this one coming in at 12 for 3. He started taking on Mark Wood and didn't really stop. He was superb through the offside in particular, and it was a real surprise when he played a very loose almost loss of concentration drive straight to Ollie Robinson at mid-on off Chris Wokes, but he has cemented himself now for a little while, you'd think, as Australia's number 5, having been a marginal selection at the start of the series. Another very fine innings as Alex Carey defends this into the pitch, and then it bounces up and hits him in the face, which will be a little bit unpleasant, but no harm done, and indeed no run. Interesting to see if Broad can get the ball to talk under lights, and if Ollie Robinson, who has been back on the field for a while but only bowled 1 over in that second session, will be able to bowl. I wonder why he's on the field if they're not going to give him the bowl. He was off the field for a little while. Last ball of the over. First over post tee from Broad, and this makes Carey play kind of round his front pad. It wouldn't have been LBW because it was too high had he not got bat on it, but it's a little bit tangled up there. Good start from Stuart Broad, who's taking an unequal part of the burden thus far. 1 run off the over. Australia 216 for 5.
Yeah, Broad. No, I was just going to say Broad doing exactly what he's done all day, really, just kind of nagging away, giving the ball a chance to do a little bit, but he needs some support.
Yes, indeed. Jay Grover, reasons I love guerrilla cricket. They know who the birthday party are. I was just talking about feeling old. I realised it's 40 years ago this year that I saw the birthday party live. Fantastic live band. Here's one for you. Just joining the commentary, Matt Searle. And what happened to Robinson? Heard you mention an injury. perhaps. Does anyone have up-to-date information on the state of Robinson?
Lower back is what he did.
Lower back.
Which seems to be a new injury that he's picked up today. But he was magnificent in his first spell. Took 2 wickets, dismissed both David Warner and Stephen Smith extremely well, both for ducks with basically unplayable deliveries, bowling leg breaks at 130 kilometres an hour. This one's full from Mark Wood, who's going to start up, so no Ollie Robinson thus far, and it's blocked back to him by Cameron Green. Mark Wood has not bowled well at all today. He's been unable to hold a line in length, but you'd imagine Mark Wood with a pink ball under lights might be a slightly tricky prospect if he can get it right. As players jingle.
Do you know Mark Wood?
Yes, he is an England bowler, quite good.
Couple of slips in place. Wood in. This one skids onto the middle of the bat of Cameron Green as he defends back to the bowler. There is no run. But there's been quite a bit of analysis done on the pink ball and what it does under lights, and the ball doesn't actually move more, but the fact that the visibility might be a little bit tricky, it does seem to make things happen. And John, you wouldn't imagine facing Mark Wood skidding the ball on at 90 miles an hour in sort of half light would be much fun.
No, I mean, as you say, we need him to get his radar right, don't we?
Well, it looked like a good delivery, but that's a superb shot by Cameron Green, nearly a Yorker, but Green flicks this away through mid-wicket with gorgeous balance and timing for 4.
Yeah, another lovely shot.
There's not one more for me, I must have 2 or 3, I need 4.
Yeah, I mean, close to a Yorker, as you say, but became basically a swinging half volley, didn't it, really? But Green made the most of it. I think, I don't know, I mean, yeah, maybe they think that Wood under the lights is a tricky prospect. The fact that they haven't opened with Robinson after tea is ominous from my perspective.
It's not ideal. I don't know exactly how long he was off for, and if you are off the field with internal injury, you have to serve out that time in the field before you can bowl again, but possibly that time has elapsed now. The next ball is a little bit back of a length from Wood, which might be the area he wants to concentrate on for a little while, just smash the ball in just back of a length, and this is defended by Green into the onside for no run.
I mean, you would have thought, given that England are now behind the 8 ball in the game, that they would have opened with their best 2 bowlers after tea if they could.
Yeah, again, I don't know exactly if the time has elapsed or not, if Robinson is indeed eligible to bowl. Wood is in 5th ball of the over. This is short outside off stump, and that's driven beautifully by Cameron Green. The forcing shot off the back foot is a tricky shot in theory, but Cameron Green has made that look so easy. Hit at the top of the bounce. 2nd for in the over.
Now my innings going. Great guns.
A tricky series with the bat, certainly initially, and he didn't have a good series with the ball in his first series, but you can see why Australia get very excited about Cameron Green.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the back foot punch is an ideal shot for him to play, really, because he's a very tall lad, and he just stood up and played it beautifully. This
is down the leg side from Wood. Cameron Green nearly did a Marnus Labuschagne in walking across his stumps, but did not end up with his face in the green, and there is no run. So 8 runs off Mark Wood's first over of the session. Actually wasn't that bad an over, but Cameron Green's seeing it very nicely. Australia 2-2-4 for 5. Meanwhile, South Africa are getting a move on in Cape Town. They now need just 59 runs to win. Keegan Peterson, who has just been dropped, and Rossi van der Dussen have brought up their 50 partnership.
Jay claims that my shelves have moved and that I'm fucking with him. I really don't think I have. I think I would have remembered moving my shelves around, Jay, to be honest. Maybe my chair has moved a little bit. He also says, John looks like someone who tried to sell me a poetry book and then broke down and started talking about Jesus. I'm proud we have the same facial hair and scalp hair, says Jay.
Stuart Broad in a little bit of movement back into Alex Carey. Again, staying over the wicket, Stuart Broad. Unusual for him to the left-handers in the last few years. Blocked back to the bowler, there is no run.
Did you look like you were a little bit nonplussed by that comment from Jay, John? Did you?
For those not watching, John now has long hair.
I think I'll take it as a compliment.
Oh, definitely.
Alex Carey, to look at all fluent thus far. 1 off 15 he is. This is blocked back to the bowler. There is no run. He's the one person you could say in the Australian team with the... Even Marcus Harris, who's been dropped with Usman Khawaja making himself undroppable, got a useful score in Melbourne. But they've got the 150 from Alex Carey in the first innings at Adelaide, and a couple of bad drops when his feet were seemingly stuck in concrete. Alex Carey is the one person in the Australian team who you could say has genuinely had a poor series.
Yeah, it's a big innings for him, this one, I think.
And decent circumstances in which to do it, with England running out of bowlers. This one's on the hips and turned nicely by Carey. They do eventually, after a bit of negotiation, come through for 2. Ollie Robinson is now down at long leg, so maybe there's a sign that he might be coming on to bowl at some point. There is also
he didn't move very swiftly towards that, though.
No, he does. He often does have the look of someone who's absolutely knackered, Ollie Robinson, and this might be something to that England need to. Well, it is something that England need to work on, because it isn't the first time in his short career. He's a fantastic bowler, but could be. But England need to be able to keep him fit for long enough, playing as part of a 4-person attack rather than a 5, as England like to go for. But Ben Stokes' side strain means that he's not able to bowl. 2 slips in the gully await for Broad. Still over the wicket to Carey, who blocks back down the wicket, and there is no run.
I'm wondering, Knackle, if I'm the only person in the world that thinks picking Stokes as a batsman only in a Test match where we're already 3-0 down with a series in the West Indies not that far away is a ridiculous idea.
I imagine that they've assessed it and think that he won't do significant enough damage to rule him out of that series. As Broad is in, this is left alone through to the keeper. There is no run. It is March, I think, that England's Test team play in the West Indies. So they do have a little bit of time. He's not in the slips. They put him at mid-off, the position in theory where you don't have to do as little moving. I mean, it says something about how good Ben Stokes is as a batter, and how many issues there are around the other batters, particularly with Bairstow injuring his finger after playing so well in Sydney, that Ben Stokes has been picked, even though he's probably 50-60% fit. He is the second best batter in the England team after Joe Root, to be fair. This is outside off stump and left alone by Carey through to the keeper. There is no run.
The trouble is, you just think about the message that it sends to someone like Lawrence, who's not played for the entire series, and you say to him, well, the guy that came in as a substitute batsman, Bairstow, is now injured, so he can't play. Stokes is carrying an injury, but we still think he's a better option than you.
Yeah. I think Dan Lawrence is a little unlucky not to be playing in place of Ollie Pope.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you don't play on this tour whether you can count yourself unlucky. It's a good tour to miss in terms of your reputation.
I think, Dan Lawrence and Dom Bess are the only 2 members of the England touring party who haven't played. Certainly Matt Parkinson made himself a better bowler by not being on this tour.
Well, I shudder to think what might have happened, to be honest, to Dom Bess had he played. Jay Grover's just got one further comment. 40, I would have given my hind teeth to see the birthday party live 40 years ago, though. Well, yes, it was 1981 in a venue called Stumps, I seem to remember, in Oxford, where I also saw 23 Skidoo and The Fall and Orange Juice and other bands as well from that era.
Surely not all on the same bill.
That would have been a good bill.
Oh, that would have been some gig, wouldn't it? Really?
Hello, hello. We've got a long leg. We've got a deep square leg. We've got a catching square leg. We've got a catching mid wicket. We've got a short leg. Mark Woods going round the wicket. Woody line is about to happen. They're going to try and bounce Cameron Green. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, this could be entertaining. I think we'll find, gentlemen, that there are 3 guys that haven't played because we've missed Mr. Overton.
Oh, Craig Overton as well, who did apparently have a couple of very long bowls in the nets and a bit of a bat. So I think he was considered. Might have done okay on a pitch with a little bit of seam movement, although it has flattened out considerably since then. The first ball of this round the wicket into the body stuff from Mark Wood is not a particularly threatening delivery. Green defends it down into the onside. There are in fact 3 fielders out on the leg side boundary. There's a long leg, a deep backward square leg, and a deep square leg just in front of square, maybe a mid-wicket, as well as the catching square leg, the mid-wicket, the short leg. There's also a gully, a point, and sort of fly slip really, deep third, as Wood is in. This one angles across green and then dives through to Billings, who takes well just above his bootlaces, and there is no run.
It's quite a decent delivery, that one.
Remember, we were on the first thing, weren't we, Knackle? And quoted Peter Siddle saying, "Don't get fooled by the lime green look of the pitch in Tasmania. It's pretty flat underneath," and so it's proved.
It's often the case with these pitches that look very green. I mean, you don't get really in Test cricket anywhere those kind of soft pitches where the ball just kind of the ball doesn't come onto the bat that you see in some domestic setups. That's a phenomenal shot by Cameron Green, really. Around the wicket, not that wide, a little bit of bounce, but he stood up tall, used all of his height and punched this beautifully away through for this. The second time he's unfurled one of those in the last few overs. That is a fabulous shot.
Yeah, but again, his frame helps in there because he's just able to stand tall, use the pace of the ball, and look like he had a lot of time as well, which is the amazing thing when a guy's bowling at that speed.
Yeah, the pitch has some, again, like a lot of the pitches in this series, it has some carry, but it's not a quick pitch. This is a short delivery, and Cameron Green seems to have an age to bend that 6'7" frame into a sort of L shape. And allow the ball to pass over his back. There is no run. Of course, you would tend to have more time in, as it were, or appear to have more time when you are batting on 70.
Yeah, of course, because he's got his eye in very much. But I mean, what we were saying about the green pitch is that, yeah, England might well have been seduced by it, but there's always the thought, if you're Root, if I choose to bat on this and it turns out to be very green, it will be very embarrassing. Yeah. And so therefore he's seduced by that thought as well.
Yes, that is true. And Mark Wood's abandoned the Woody line because he's going back over the wicket. So he goes very wide in the crease and bangs a ball in, which Cameron Green doesn't need to play at. Billings takes down the leg side. There is no run. So he's bowling to the same field pretty much, but from over the wicket. Perhaps trying to really get the ball into the body of Cameron Green and not allowing anything outside off stump. Worth a go, I suppose. Rory Burns is down there at fly slip or very fine third. Mark Wood turns at the sawdust pile at the top of his mark and is in. Last ball of the over. Slightly discomforts Green, gets up off a length. Green forces it into the offside, gets it down though, no real danger. That punch driven four was the only runs off the over. Australia 230 for 5.
Yeah, just over on YouTube. It's a little quiet on our socials at the moment, so if you've got something to say, now's a good time. That's Bollocks, says back foot off driving, 145k per hour. Gorgeous. It was indeed a fantastic shot. And just one follow-up from Jay, who says he's got a surrealistic fear about my room, that John's haircut has become a psychic anchor, and that picking Stokes was fucking daft.
Oh, remains to be seen how he bats, I suppose. But
I agree with that thought.
He's of limited use in the field at the moment, and he's not going to bowl.
Yeah, I guess perhaps from his point of view, he might have said, I really want to play. I was playing myself back into form.
I'm sure he did, but that's not... Players don't select the team.
They don't.
Broad is in, continuing outside off stump, and Carey nearly chops the ball back onto his stumps. Maybe they've identified something with this over the wicket angle when Broad loves to bowl round the wicket to the left-handers. But Alex Carey was lucky there; he didn't jab that down onto his leg stump. They come through for a single.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel that I kind of get it though. Perhaps I'm a slightly different point of view from yours, John. If Stokes had felt that his timing was coming back and he wanted to continue despite being somewhat discomforted, I mean, for someone who's raising their hand for the 5th test of an Ashes Down Under and is desperate to play is a rare commodity indeed, looking at some of the faces on this
Ben
English
Stokes
team.
would be, you do get the impression that Ben Stokes would be desperate to play if he was missing a limb. So I don't think he's a bit of a special case anyway. This is outside off stump and left alone on length, really, more than anything, by Green through to the keeper. There is no run. I do know a couple of years ago, I think just before COVID hit, maybe 2019 or so, England had to tell Ben Stokes to ease off in training because they were worried he might break himself.
Yeah, but that's the point, isn't it? The only reason he's in the Test match is because he's Ben Stokes. I mean, anybody else that's injured just doesn't play. It's just a wrong precedent for me completely.
Braun is in. This one nibbles away a little bit, but Green adjusts to it nicely and pushes into the offside, and there is no run.
Do you remember Steve Waugh being stretchered off, I think, in the 3rd test in the 2001 series?
Yeah, I do.
Mr. Test came back with a limp and scored 100, I think. So, there's that kind of symbolic act.
There is a little difference in having a sort of a limp and having a side strain, which means basically he can't really move in the field. I was not terribly surprised that Ben Stokes was playing, and I assume there's been some quite hefty medical assessment of him over the past few days. This next ball is full and pushed up to mid-on. There is no run. A wicket in Cape Town, by the way. Mr. Makes Things Happen. Shardo Thakur has bowled Keegan Peterson off the inside edge. Another fantastic innings by Keegan Peterson, who looks a real find for South Africa at number 3. He goes for 82. South Africa 155 for 3 should win this game, but we have seen wickets fall in clusters in what's been a brilliant series in South Africa.
Keegan Peterson is a player, let me tell you.
He looks very, very good. Full outside off stump,
beautiful.
Driven with the exquisite ease by Cameron Green. The check drive, the full stride into the ball. Chris Wokes dived at it at short extra cover, but couldn't get near it, and that has raced away even on this slowish, rain-affected outfield for 4.
There's not one boy for me, I must have 2 or 3, I need 4.
I mean, this is a gorgeous innings to watch. It really is. I mean, lovely stride. You know, full flow, high elbow.
He's been bowled in some slightly weird ways, Cameron Green, early in his innings, where the bat doesn't seem to quite come down straight. But as soon as he's got into his innings, there's a lovely simplicity to the way he plays. This is driven nicely and well fielded, actually. I think that's Wokes again at short extra cover, diving to his right and possibly saving 4 runs again. 5 runs off the over. Australia 235 for 5.
Marcus Fox tells us, he says, hi from Eloise Copper Mine, south of Cloncurry, northwest Queensland. Currently a refreshing 37 degrees at 7:50 p.m. Classic outback Australia. And Jay Grover, well, look, modesty forbids me from reading his entire tweets, but he's very nice about me. And then he says, precocious as I was, not enough to see the birthday party as a 4-year-old.
Oh.
And I think it's a little bit quiet on the socials. It's understandable.
I wonder if everyone's watching this India-South Africa game.
Yes, I think that's quite possible as well.
It's been a hell of a series.
Yeah, well, I think my last thought on the Stokes situation is if England were 1 ahead, or if it was 1-1, and you were trying to win the Ashes, yeah, fair enough. At 3-0 down and seriously incapacitated, because your whole team is dictated by the fact that you're playing Stokes as a batsman only. It just
I wonder if John, at the back of his mind, he's got the feeling that he let the side down so badly 4 years ago.
Wood in. This is a short delivery, which Carey plays well, actually. Drops the hands and allows it to fly through to Sam Billings. Wood going round the wicket to the left-hander. There is no run.
But regardless of whether he did or not, Ian, you can't do anything about that now.
No. I know, he's a very emotional man, he's a very emotive man. He plays off the energy of emotion. I think it doesn't surprise any of us that he's put himself forward for this test.
No, but sometimes you have to save him from himself.
Yeah, I agree.
That's fair. Wood is in. This one's turned off the hips by Carey. Do well to get off the strike, because that line from Wood kind of tucking him up might have caused some difficulty. He's on 5 off 23, playing a nice sort of calm supporting hand to Cameron Green. I think the same is true to an extent of James Anderson, who isn't as outwardly expressive in that sense, but is also a fairly sort of dogged and strong character. And England clearly made the assessment a couple of days ago from what Joe Root was saying about being fit to perform being different from being fit to play, that they didn't think Anderson, they thought there was a risk of Anderson not getting through the test match. Ooh, this one's hurried Green. He didn't really know where that ball was, I think, for a little while, as it was short and into his ribs. He's played it quite well in the end, getting the bottom hand off the bat and dropping it down into the onside, but that could have popped up to short leg.
Yeah, that was a decent delivery. Good direction, you see, pretty straight.
Yeah, and sometimes the ones that don't quite get... We've seen a lot of bouncers in this series fly harmlessly over the batter and the keeper's head, but that was right into the gloves. Well played by Green. Ooh, that was not well played by Cameron Green. He's sort of ducked into a ball and been quite lucky that the ball has skidded through as quickly as it has, so much so that his attempted to flail at the ball didn't really fill anyone with confidence, and there is no run. These are not bouncers particularly that Mark Wood's bowling, they're just slightly back of a length and the ball's skidding through awkwardly.
Yeah, I think possibly that shot was the product of the previous ball, wasn't it? That he wasn't quite sure what it was going to do.
I wonder if he's also having trouble sighting the ball under the lights. The next one is a little shorter and it's easier for Green to stand up and play and drop this down to Darwin Milan, who I think is in there at short leg. There's often Ollie Pope in there under the lid, who's a pretty good short leg fielder. I haven't seen enough of Darwin Milan under the lid to make a judgment.
I suppose you can say that perhaps none of us expected Mark Wood to play in 4 out of 5 tests.
First time he's played 3 consecutive tests since the 2015 Ashes, which was his debut series. And yeah, he's not bowled well today, but he looks quick and in rhythm and not particularly injured. That long run-up has made all the difference. Wood now round the wicket to Green. This is short and hooked down the throat of mid-wicket. The bouncer line has worked. Mark Wood gets himself into the game. Cameron Green will not get his first Test 100 today. That was straight down the throat of Zach Crawley at mid-wicket. Perhaps softened up by a couple earlier in the over. Good aggressive bowling from Mark Wood. Cameron Green goes for a very pleasant to watch 74 off 109. And England into the bowlers. Australia 236 for 6. Didn't really try and hook it up, didn't really try and pull it down. It was a very simple catch for Zach Crawley, his third catch, I think, of the day. Good bowling, I guess, but a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, I think it's clever bowling by Wood. His line has been much better in this over, and he's actually tried to pull that from well outside off stump, with a ball kind of angling from round the wicket. So he's got to drag it from a long way, and he just, because of the line of the ball, he didn't get enough on it.
Sometimes you see batters, he might have been better trying to hit that for 6, rather than trying to hit it up. But he timed it nicely enough. It wasn't a top edge by any means, but Zach Crawley barely had to move at just a sort of squarish mid-wicket. Good innings though from Cameron Green. And
it's good. He might have been better off with a top edge there.
Well, maybe, yes. I think we'll go one more over of this commentary triad. Interesting, Australia have not sent up Pat Cummins, who's normally the number 8. But Mitchell Starc is back pretty well in this series and has made a case, I think, all for the last couple of years to be batting above Pat Cummins, is indeed doing so. But that was the end of the over, so Stuart Broad will be bowling to Alex Carey. And, for all that a lot has gone wrong for England today, as Broad comes in starting his 18th over. This is clipped by Carey into the mid-wicket region. They come through for a single. Australia are only 237 for 6. There's definitely a way for England to keep this game very competitive.
We've all watched enough Test cricket. 10 years ago, England are in charge of this game at 236 for 6.
With a batting lineup, if the batting lineup shows as much resolve as it did in Sydney, Then there's they don't have Bairstow, who looked like he was batting like $1 million at times in that game. But anyway, here is swinging Mitchell Starc, who could do some damage.
Mitchell Starc believes the truest hunter is the one who sees this guarantee. Mitchell Starc holds no galaxies.
It's a very pleasant batter to watch sometimes, Mitchell Starc. He's a tall man, uses his height well. He blocks this one to cover, and there is no run. He's got a nice free swing of the bat, Mitchell Starc.
Yeah, I think probably him coming in ahead of Cummings signals the fact that Australia intend to keep the game moving forward fairly quickly.
It does seem a pitch where you're better off trying to play, not aggressively per se, but positively, and look to score rather than survive. As Broad is in a few slips away, this is left alone by Starc easily enough. Through to the keeper, there is no run. It honestly looks easier to play attacking shots than defensive shots, certainly in the first session.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're Australia, if the worst happens and you lose the 4 wickets, you're going to have 280, 300. Then you're going to have a little nasty period to bowl at England's fragile batting lineup under the lights in the dark. Well,
you're also 3-0 up, aren't you? So
yeah, exactly.
You might as well give it a go.
England have yet another new opening partnership in Rory Burns and Zach Crawley. This one's left alone by Starc, sticking his bottom out towards square leg. There is no run.
The English batting lineup, however many batsmen it appears to have in it, the prospect of it firing is a big if.
Yeah, and
it sure is.
Joe Root can keep up his heroics for forever. He's become rather vulnerable to Cameron Green, and Scott Boland just nibbling the ball outside off stump. Similar amount to how Virat Kohli's been getting at in this current series in South Africa. Starc doesn't have to play at this one either. Through to the keeper, there is no run.
I heard Joe Root get interviewed by Adam Gilchrist at the toss, and his voice sounded like it was cracking this morning. It sounded like a man who'd had too much, loaded upon him.
There's a little, for a guy who seems sort of squeaked. There's a little gravel creeping into his voice these days. He, being captain of an international cricket team does age people. Although Patrick Cummins looks completely ageless, fresh-faced as ever. He'll learn.
Just for now.
He'll learn. This is full and wide outside
exactly.
off stump. Mitchell Starc might have thought about having a whack at that, but didn't. Through to the keeper, there is no run. An over that only goes for 1 run, and I think that'll do for England at this stage. Australia 237 for 6. We will have a change. John Batham will take over on ball by ball. I'll be his summariser, and Jeremy Messages Henderson will take over socials for the next half an hour.
Thank you, Knuckle. Good morning, Messi. He's climbed into his seat and climbed out again.
Oh, sorry, just turning the light on so you can see me properly.
And good to see you. It is, sir. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to us around the world. Australia 237 for 6, which somehow feels a lot bigger than it probably is, but there we are. Anyway, it's once again to be Mark Wood into Mitchell Starc, who sort of flays at this, uppercuts it away, square of the wicket, and it goes for 4.
That was Alex Carey, in fact.
It was Carey! Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, the first really aggressive shot he's played, and nearly decapitated the square umpire who's fielding.
That's probably why I didn't realise it was him, because he's been so becalmed. But as you say, he very nearly did take the umpire's head off.
I'm not sure why the umpire's standing at points, given that there are 2 left-handers.
Yeah, very strange. He probably wishes he wasn't now. He's probably putting his heart back in his chest again. He's probably swallowed it, I should imagine.
Yeah, good duck by Paul Wilson, who's a tall man.
But fine shot from Carey. Out, not in keeping with anything else that he's played. The umpires seem to be conferring. I'm not quite sure what they're conferring about. I don't know whether we've got any theories on that matter.
Rod Tucker was
certainly not going to be bad light in the middle of the night.
No, clearly not.
I thought Rod Tucker might be using his experience to tell Paul Wilson maybe stand at square leg, but no.
Oh, he's gone back to where he was. Here's Wood again. He's in, and this is short and just balloons over the top of Carey, and Billings actually drops it behind the stumps.
Oh, I see why he's because there's a short leg and a fielder at square leg. So
it's actually raining.
Oh, is it?
Oh,
yes. On Channel 7, they're showing the rain in front of the floodlights.
So they were obviously having a discussion about whether they were going to let it try and pass over or.
Yeah, it's one of those shows that looks like a lot on TV in front of floodlights, but obviously is very, very minor at the moment.
Yeah, floodlights or streetlights always make rain look heavier than it is, don't they? So Wood switched now to around the wicket. He's in, and this is far too short again. And Carey just ducks out of the way, and this time Billings does take it cleanly. I'm sure our troops would have covered this earlier on, Knackle, but the 700th Englishman to be capped.
Yes, indeed, way ahead of any other Test-playing nation. Okay, England do play more Test matches than anyone. It is is that 699/700 the curious case of Alan Jones and the Centenary Test?
Yes. Oh, they're conferring again now, the umpires, and they're calling covers on. So they're coming off. They're coming off halfway through Wood's over.
Apart from anything else, they do not want to run the risk of the pitch getting too damaged if the rain gets heavier.
No, absolutely. So the ground staff are running onto the field.
Yes, whereas the Sydney ground staff were wearing sort of green and white rugby-style jumpers, well, 80s rugby-style jumpers. In Hobart, they've got the sort of rain-repellent blue poncho type affairs. Less stylish, probably more practical than what appeared to be very heavy wool in Sydney.
They're well prepared, aren't they? Yeah, clearly.
Rain at 241 for 6. I can't imagine this would be a particularly pleasant experience for any spectators at Bellerive Oval, given that it's not that warm and now raining, and it's
very mild rain,
and it's 9 at night.
And and the radar suggests it's actually going to be a very brief shower. So I think the prospects are good for getting back on fairly quickly. I'll run through a few tweets while we're waiting. Anyhow, Joe Grover says, "Fourthie, you're not taking the compliments. That's the way you play it, then. Fair dues." Phil Green wants us to switch over to South Africa versus India, as it's more interesting. And I pointed out to him that that's actually on Guerrilla South Africa if you want to listen to that. At the moment, South Africa are 157 for 3. Chasing.
Our friends Guerrilla Cricket South Africa are the official radio broadcaster for that series.
James says Stokes was always going to put himself forward as long as he could stand up, but it's not or shouldn't be his decision. Lawrence should probably have played instead. I think that's probably sensible.
You can think that Stokes should be playing, or that it's a fair enough call, as I do, but you're absolutely right that it's not up to the player to. They can say they can give their assessment, but it's not up to them to pick themselves.
No, we're in dangerous territory if it's up to a player to pick themselves.
So Ravi's got it in for you, John. He says England's second and best batter is able to bat and to field brilliantly, but Lord Haw anti-Butler is complaining that he isn't bowling and therefore shouldn't be in the team. How does John invent his opinions? I want some of the stuff he's taking. I think that's a little unfair, Ravi. I think John was looking to protect Stokes from himself as much as anything else.
I think Ravi and I have this relationship where he always feels obliged to take the opposite view to me, and life would be very dull if everybody took the same view as me. So he's entitled to it, but that's another thing that we don't agree about.
Oh well, Ravi, I'm sure there's plenty of things he doesn't agree with lots of people about, and we deal with that well, on the whole. Mog says, to be fair, England has already been batted out of the game. And Matzel says 236 for 6. At what stage do Australia declare? Roger Melly said, how good does your batting average have to be before you're classified as an all-rounder? Mitchell Starc has an average of above 30. Well, Mitchell Starc is ranked in the top 10 all-rounders by the ICC.
The ICC's all-rounder ratings are very skewed towards bowlers. Basically, if you're a bowler who can bat a bit, you're likely to do quite well in those stakes. Mitchell Starc's batting average in Test cricket is surely not above 30. It is 23.6, which is which is decent for an 8 or 9.
Yeah. Nestler says, I saw the birthday party in the early 80s in Camden. It was something else. And James says, given that it's not Butler, Bairstow or Billings, do we know who will be keeping for England the T20s in the West Indies?
Well, Billings is flying to the West Indies and will be available in time, assuming he doesn't get COVID on the way, for the second of those games. But it is likely to be Phil Salt, who does keep a fair bit in white ball cricket and will sort of keep a batter at the top of the order in that T20 squad.
There's a real multiplicity of people in T20 who can keep wicket.
It's a useful extra string to your bow, isn't it? It gives you another reason to be in the team. Phil Salt's an exciting batter.
Yeah, he's certainly that.
So, speaking of exciting batters, I was really sad to see Green get out, not from an Australian perspective, but because I was enjoying some of his shots so much. He's got something special, that guy.
He's got there is I described it as a simplicity to the way that he plays, and it is very pleasing to watch when everything is working well. Early in his innings, the bat can sometimes not quite be lined up with the ball, but there is definitely something about him.
He used his frame really well, didn't he? He used his frame really well.
With those
up towards the ball. The punch off the back foot's a really good shot.
It's always a pleasing shot when someone can play that shot well, and they're standing up tall and punching it through the covers with a vertical bat is a fine shot. I thought the sort of flicked on drive that he played off an almost Yorker from Mark Wood was a beautiful shot as well. Lovely balance. It's easy when you're a big guy to sort of plant the front foot and fall over yourself, but he played that extremely well.
Yeah, he certainly.
So there's on YouTube, Brian in Brisbane is there. I actually think that's Brian 001, who says, nope, still here in Northampton, still bloody cold and foggy, and wild commentary from 2 games. And I've realised I haven't reloaded YouTube since the tea break, which you probably have done, haven't you, Nicole?
I have, yes. The reason we're wibbling so is because it has started raining in Hobart. We had play delayed by half an hour with a bit of rain, and it's been raining very heavily around Hobart, or very persistently at least in the last couple of weeks. But we had a good chunk of time. This is the first interruption to play once it started for rain. It rains with Australia 241 for 6, having just lost Cameron Green, pulling down the throat of Zach Crawley at square mid wicket off Mark Wood, who's got himself on the board. Outside of the context of the rest of the series, you'd say that this game's quite evenly poised. But with the way the series has gone and the way England's batting deteriorated over the calendar year of 2021, then there's a certain amount of Anglo-pessimism going on.
Well, English Summer TV says, as England fans, let's just hope we lose this test. Otherwise, Championship cricket will be getting played in November this year. And
you do know that there is actually going to be a lot more county championship cricket in the middle of the summer next year than last year.
Which is good to hear. Brown in Brisbane says, where do you know for England? What is their next test, or are they straight back into short form cricket? Well, they're both, because they're playing in the West Indies in short form cricket from the 20th of January. But they're playing test matches in the West Indies from March.
And the squads will be likely very different. Possibly entirely different.
Yes, well, I mean, there's nobody who's playing in the short form game in the West Indies who's likely to be in the the Test team other than Billings?
I think Saqib Mahmood is in that squad, and he's
maybe,
not.
yeah.
I would like to see Saqib Mahmood given a chance in Test cricket. I think there's a bowler of some talent there.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, the little bit he played in the BBL was quite impressive as well.
He bowled in first-class cricket. John, you might remember this from this summer, unless you've frozen. You may remember it, but you can't tell it. The spell that Saqib Mahmood bowled in the Roses game against Yorkshire, absolutely fantastic spell. He gets the ball to move at pace. Skiddy, I think he's a little unlucky not to make this tour. You're on mute, John.
Which is unusual.
Yeah, I did actually call for Saqib Mahmood to be moved from the BBL to join the squad. I thought that would be a wise call. But you're right. He has spells where he makes things happen, and he's obviously he's an alternative to Mark Wood because he's very quick.
Yeah, and with I mean, he's more of an opening bowler than Mark Wood is. He does move he does swing the ball. Obviously, with Jofra Archer, who would be in England's first choice 11 in all formats if he were fit, and Ollie Stone not available, then he's an option. The other two, looking at the squad going to the West Indies, that I can see as potential Test picks. Obviously, James Vince has played some Test cricket and could get a recall with a good start to the county season, and Liam Livingstone, who is certainly when he first came through was identified as a better red ball player than a white ball player, and has done some good things in first class cricket. I think those are the two that you could say. I think David Payne has been in the Gloucestershire left armour, has been in Test squads, but is not likely to be featuring anytime soon. But those are the ones that you would say are potential options. I suspect that they will be saved for white ball cricket, and that you will see a real split between a sort of very defined split between red and white ball cricket, with potentially even split coaches, which is not a bad idea, I don't think, if you can get the right people.
There's a lot of talk of Australia doing that shortly too. James says, I didn't know Salt was the keeper as well. Even better as a replacement for Al Davis at Lancashire then. And Nesta says, pollution warning across London today. Be careful out there, Guerrilla London people. And Jay says, I love the fact that Guerrilla Cricket people know more than I do about things I care about. Top lads, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don't know if we're likely to restart again. There's no indication from the ground in Hobart that the rain has stopped. Meanwhile, in South Africa, Temba Bavuma's just hit 2 boundaries and an over off of Jasprit Bumrah, and South Africa need just 46 more to win. The reason we are not commentating on that game while it stops raining is to not cannibalise our friends Guerrilla Cricket South Africa, who are the official radio broadcasters for this series.
Quite right too. No, to pick up what you were saying about possible inclusions in Test cricket, I would have thought, given Stokes' struggles, if we were going to have a look at Livingstone, it would have been a good time to do it. But of course, we sent everybody home, which was magnificent planning.
Well, Livingstone wasn't actually in Australia. He didn't play the Big Bash. He wasn't in the country.
No, but we sent the A squad home.
The Lions were sent home. It was pointed out to me that you probably couldn't keep the Lions squad with no fixtures on for that long in bubbles and so forth. I suppose they could have played more games maybe against Australia A, but then you're taking players out of the Big Bash, and it all gets very. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think England's Lions program is something they need to invest more time and money in, and energy and get some fixtures into. They've played 1 home game in the last 4 years, I think. I can't remember whose article it was, but someone did an analysis of the games that the A teams have played, and India and the West Indies are way ahead of England in terms of that, and it's an important step, given that county championship cricket is very, very different to Test cricket. You don't get anywhere near as much, by orders of magnitude, high pace bowling. You don't get anywhere near as much spin bowling, and it's a really useful guide for the selectors as much as anything else to at least see how players do against those against better quality opposition and in those different conditions and against different challenges.
Yeah, we certainly need to think that through, Knuckle. You're absolutely right. I mean, you mentioned James Vince as well. Well, I guess whether Vince gets another run may well depend on what Root decides to do about the captaincy, because there aren't a huge number of candidates around, and Vince is one of the few people around who does have captaincy experience. So is that a route back in for Vince? I'm not saying that it should be, I'm just asking the question.
There'll be a lot. I mean, Sam Billings captains for Kent, and I was sort of jokingly mentioning it. Well, not jokingly, but we were thinking of left field captaincy options, and basically taking the Tim Payne route back to Test captaincy, with hopefully not how that ended. But the idea of coming in as a kind of continuity candidate. Can
I just fill you in on the weather? I just tuned into the Channel 7 broadcast. They've put the full covers up over the whole square and the run-ups at the moment. It appears to be drizzling very lightly. Only the umpire had an umbrella out there. Nobody else seemed interested. But what I would say is, given the extent of the covers, I'd say we'll probably get at least 15 minutes notice of when they're coming back. So it might be worth just taking a break and letting people know.
Well, I think Tony said he wanted to come in and wibble.
Did he? Oh, well.
He said he wanted to come in and wibble in 10 minutes.
Oh, right. Well, we've got to keep wibbling for another 10 then. Okay.
Well, we can wibble away. There's plenty to wibble about, I think.
There's always plenty to talk about. I mean, we were just talking about potential candidate. The one who was, a long-term county captain who was being potentially talked about as a replacement is Rory Burns, but he's no longer secure of his place in the team as he was last year. So that option probably has gone. They don't seem to want to give it to someone like Stuart Broad, who is relatively secure of his place in the team in most games, and has done it in white ball cricket, and is certainly someone with a pretty good cricket brain. Although England would never get a review right again if Stuart Broad captained in Test cricket. They don't want to seem to take that move of giving it to
just
a bowler.
review everything.
Well, quite, yeah. You'd have to appoint a separate review captain. Giving it to Ben Stokes, I think, is a bad idea.
Agreed.
God knows he's got enough to worry about.
Agreed.
It is a tricky one. There isn't, for the first time in a long time, there hasn't been a successor groomed. Root was groomed as the successor to Cook, who was groomed as the successor to Strauss, who became the obvious candidate after Vaughan stopped captaining, partly thanks to the disastrous Flintoff interregnum. And Vaughan was the obvious successor to, and groomed as such, to Nasser Hussain. So you're probably going back 20 years until for the last time that the next captain wasn't immediately obvious quite quickly.
The line of succession seems to have been somewhat severed, doesn't it? I mean, you mentioned Billings. Interesting left field idea, but I mean, surely at the beginning of, from the West Indies onwards, surely Folkes has got to.
I would imagine
become
so.
wicketkeeper. Surely,
I would imagine so. Folkes would have kept in the Test matches when New Zealand played in England had he not got injured.
Yeah,
James Bracey only played that. Obviously, I think Butler and Bairstow were both rested for white ball cricket, and after coming back from the abortive IPL or the suspended IPL, Ben Folkes would have played and was in line to play, and then he slipped on his socks in the dressing room at the Oval and did some ligaments. So he was first cab off the rank and probably would be fitness dependent for the West Indies Test if it is decided that Jos Buttler's time as Test wicketkeeper is over and they don't want to go back to Bairstow with the gloves. And Billings is I say more likely to be used in the white ball formats, but he's almost his perennial first cab off the rank in the white ball teams just because of the sheer depth of batting talent. So it's a curious one for him. For with the caveat that he is a very well-educated, quite posh, white blonde man, he's quite an unlucky cricketer.
Yeah, I understand that comment.
In terms of the captaincy, I'm just wondering, the test visit to the West Indies is for just 2 test matches, as I understand it. I mean, it might be that it would be appropriate for Root to be given something of a break just for that, so that he doesn't have to come back until June when New Zealand come and then South Africa.
It's 3 test matches.
Yeah, 3 each. Sorry, is it 3? Is
3 in the West Indies? Yes.
The FTP's program shows is 2. It must have been up.
Yeah, I think they added another test match. I think partly
right.
to
reward West Indies.
Yes, exactly. Although that didn't really work for Pakistan, did it?
No.
Don't start me on that. Joe Root and Mark Wood have both said that they want to play the IPL if possible, or potentially think about playing the IPL if it doesn't take away from their. Root said if it doesn't take away from my Test cricket, to at least enter the IPL auction, which happens in the auction is in just under a month's time.
Well, the Windies tour wouldn't overlap with the IPL, would it? Because that should be over by the time the IPL starts.
Yes, the IPL is starting a bit later this year than it did last year. So no, they won't be missing any cricket, and certainly England would not let him enter the IPL auction, or he wouldn't be available for those IPL games if the Test team were playing. I mean, he'll have a little bit of time off, and he may well come away refreshed.
It raises a really interesting question, though. That conflict potentially between the IPL and other cricket is just going to sort of become a bigger and bigger bugbear, particularly while COVID issues.
Maybe. I mean, it's the way I see that is that if Test cricket were, if boards outside the big 3 had enough money to pay their players to a decent level, then it becomes a much freer choice, and you don't need. It doesn't necessarily. I don't think it has to be a conflict.
I noticed you tweeting about that the other day, Knuckle, and I agree. I think we have to balance things off so that people have got a genuine choice. And as you say, I think we're heading more and more towards a time when red and white ball squads are going to be very different and almost exclusive.
That may be, but that doesn't mean to say that given the number of people playing in the IPL, you may not want people who are Test players who might not be part of their white ball squad. I mean, I look at someone, some of the really good batsmen who are around, like Williamson, who might not be regarded as a big white ball cricketer, and yet is absolutely
he's extremely valuable to. I mean, Sunrisers Hyderabad rate him so highly that they kept him on over Rashid Khan, which is probably a mistake. But Williamson is a someone who has been successful in T20 cricket. I mean, there's quite a few actually in the Indian setup. Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul, and Virat Kohli immediately spring to mind as kind of all format batter. But it's not easy. It's not easy to succeed in both, and for a lot of players, it might well be better for their career if they chose to specialise a bit. The best players will obviously want to be part of all formats and to be seen as a player who can do that. But it is difficult. You look at somebody like Stephen Smith, one of the best Test batters of the last 50, 60 years, has never been a top level T20 player.
Yeah, that's true. We're actually due for a change anyhow, aren't we? Forthy and Tony are due to come on just about now with John. So if you're there, Tony.
Yeah, just to let you know, a lot of people at the ground are saying it's not raining. Dirk Nannes, who's on the broadcast, is saying cricket's shooting itself in the foot, so that the game should not be off for this drizzle. They need to be back on within an hour. So this might be that kind of annoying persistent drizzle that you could play through but can't start again in more developments when we have it. Over to the next Wibble crew. South Africa are 170 for 3 in Cape Town, needing another 42 runs to seal the series. The reason we're not switching to commentary of that game is because our sister station, Guerrilla Cricket South Africa, are the official radio broadcasters.
Who Jay Grover says, I'm gutted, I forgot to call all of Guerrilla Cricket South Africa a box of delights as well. And he also says Knackle is mental, Ray Broad.
I wasn't actually advocating for it, but anyway.
Okay, so we're up to date on tweets.
Lovely. There's no sign of Tony, actually. So.
What, next time?
Oh, yeah, there is! Tony, hello!
The fish has appeared!
There he is.
I did.
It's like, what was that character in children's TV who just used to appear from nowhere? Mr.
Ben.
Not Mr. Ben.
No,
Mr. Ben, that's right. Was it Mr. Ben?
It was the shopkeeper that always used to appear from nowhere, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
Yes.
Sounds rather sinister, to be honest.
It was rather sinister, yeah.
He used to appear from nowhere and scare children.
Yeah.
Mr. Bish is not scary.
Or hopefully not.
Not in the least.
Well, what do we make of what we've seen then, chaps? So far.
Well, just as I was saying to anyone who'll listen, whatever it is, 240 for 6. Traditionally, in the history of Test match cricket, you would assume that the bowling side was in the lead if it was 240 for 6. But context is everything. We know the limitations of this English batting lineup, and we know various other things about the way the game has changed. So we assume that Australia, knowing everything we do now, are probably in the box seat.
Yeah, I'd sort of go along with that. It once again is a bit of history repeating, isn't it? Fantastic start for England. Joe Root must have been thinking, wow, I've made the right call there. And then, they're just a combination ahead again, who lower middle order has been quite a bugbear for England this series, and so it's proven once more. Fantastic knock by Head. Okay, he kind of gave his wicket away at the end, but that ton next to was it Cameron Green who made 70 odd.
Yeah.
It's just the lower middle order wriggling away from England thinking they were in a good position.
It happens so often.
Those two guys have played very well, haven't they? We have to say those two guys played extremely well. Green is clearly maturing as a Test player with the bat. He's had a good series with the ball. The last 2 innings suggest that he's producing the runs that Cricket Australia were expecting. So those two have played very well. Crucially, again, England drop a catch very early in the innings because they dropped Labuschagne on naught. That will have had an effect on the overall scenario.
It will, but I think when they caught 4 out of 5 today, which is more or less standard for Test match cricket.
Do we have any questions about
goes down.
Again about the bowling selections? Do we think? I mean, I'm looking at Mark Wood's figures, and I'm thinking on a Green top, he's gone for nearly 7 and over. I watched him for quite a bit before I nodded off. He seemed to be either too short or too full. They were driving and pulling, with alacrity, when you shouldn't be going for 7, even if you're not taking wickets. He took 1. You shouldn't be going for the best part of 7 and over, should you? Not when you when you bang on top in a match like this.
Well, the problem that you've got with the bowling selection that we produced is Wood's an attacking bowler anyway, so he's always going to go for more runs than most people. Yeah, 7 and over's not acceptable. But of course, you then get done out of being able to bowl Robinson all afternoon because he develops a problem. And you've only got 4 because you played Stokes when he's not fit and he can't bowl. So you've got somebody who's likely to go for a lot of runs. Wokes traditionally doesn't do a lot of Broad. So if Broad or Robinson develops a problem, you've immediately hamstrung yourself, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was a
because we couldn't bring another all-rounder in who could bat and bowl equally as well as Stokes at his best. If you bring Dan Lawrence in, it's not going to solve the fifth bowler issue.
Well, you could have some of his frog in a blender spin.
Yeah,
which is always always kind of entertaining to watch.
One point that's interested me is that, for years the received wisdom was, Australia go at 4 runs and over, they're super aggressive, they've changed the face of Test cricket. That has not been the case in this series. Very often a man will be 25 off 80 deliveries and then gradually go up through the gears. They've clearly had a strategy, Australia, this series, not to worry about early acceleration until today, which I think shows the flexibility of their thinking. And I think that's one other big difference in the series. Australia have shown a lot of flexibility and imagination at times in their thinking, like today's counter-attacking punch, whereas one gets the feeling that England have been sort of slave to spreadsheet thinking at times, fielding something they cooked up 2 or 3 months ago, on a big whiteboard somewhere. And then when you got to Australia, they should have been far more flexible in who played where, for example.
Love to hear Grace Jones doing slave to the spreadsheet. That would be fantastic. But I mean, I absolutely take your point.
Yes, indeed.
I really do take your point, Forthy. It would be absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
No, you're right. I'm trying to think, have England done this series? I mean, you could argue that Johnny B did. I think his was a very positive, quite aggressive innings at the time. But they seem with Travis Head, it's almost the second coming of Travis Head, isn't it? As a Test player, and he's been superb. Yeah, he sort of clicked immediately. It's almost like he walked out thinking, I'm as good as in one day mode here. Because there could be a ball with my name on it, and once if England do that and it goes wrong, then we're straight on their backs going,
of course
they can't think as Test players. On the other hand, you may adjust too much and then you're in Hamid territory, or actually, to be fair, David Warner territory. What was it? 22 dot balls, and then it was 2 ducks in a pond followed by a duck, wasn't it, for him? And we'd be all over our England openers, because Hamid has shown an ability, some stickability, but at the expense of the ability to actually score runs, which ultimately is your job as a batsman. So, but I think if you look, our lower middle order is inconsistent. Australia has, when they've needed to count on them, they've delivered. And I think there is a lot of differences you can make between the two teams. But if you look at the strategy of each game, pretty much, that's been a consistent factor. Every time England have had a sniff.
But that's been the case. That's been the case all century down under, hasn't it? I mean, I know we've mentioned it before during this series, but how many times did Brad Haddin come in? When was it? 8 years ago, and save the situation when Australia were very often 5 or 6 down and looking in desperate trouble. It's a great, it's traditionally been a great strength of the Australians that they will never say die.
Yeah, but I think your point about greater flexibility is strong, Forthy, because that's partly due to the way that Root captains. Anyway, I think Root is. I don't think he's the most creative or inventive of captains. I think he captains by rote a lot of the time. But equally, yes, Bish, you could say that about Hamid. You could also say it about Milan, because if you look at his back-to-back 80s in the series, he got himself into a mode where he was playing much more positively, and then on the second of those occasions, I think he got out dancing down the pitch to Nathan Lyon, and getting out in that fashion's almost sent him into a I'm not going to play a shot at all.
Well, it's what pundits will always call, sort of retrospectively, decision making. it's like somehow inside a cricketer's head there is a sort of an internal brain committee which meets and has a vote about whether to play forward or back, all of which happens in the space of a millisecond. And but it is kind of that. It is decision making. The subject of route, I think, is a really interesting one, and I'll tell you who writes in the Times now, who I've suddenly found I've just really enjoyed reading, because everything he writes, I think, oh, that's really sensible, or that's a really well made point. Shane Watson. I've been absolutely fascinated by his kind of transformation from dodgy LBW reviewer and a man bothered by ghosts to really a smart thinking cricket writer. And he made a fascinating point, which was that he said, if this was a business, which it kind of is, but if you're in business, senior executives will get a degree of mentoring. They will get coaching in the art of leadership. They won't be cut adrift, with captains in cricket, and I don't think it's just England he's talking about. You're sort of pushed out there and it's good luck, sink or swim, matey. Whereas in business you would have a greater degree of coaching. Now I have met Chris Silverwood in his Middlesex days. I don't know him. You probably know him better than I, John, from sort of Middlesex days past. But I'm not sure Root is getting anything that is helping his captaincy. He's become so valuable for his runs and his occasional oblique, lead off spin from time to time. That is someone actually mentoring, supporting, coaching how he acts and thinks and operates as a leader. And I'm just not sure I see evidence of that. If he's getting it, we aren't seeing it. I more suspect he's not getting it. So we're judging a man who's, single-handedly holding up the team, because without his runs, God knows where we'd be, and criticising his leadership. And my fear would be he's not getting the right support to deliver that leadership.
No, I tend to agree, Tony. I think, it sounds like I'm being critical of his leadership. As you say, he has a huge amount to deal with. He has an enormous amount to deal with. He's carrying the batting like he's dragging a 10-ton truck up a hill with 4 flat tyres, which is enough of a challenge. And now he's having to bowl to sort of put brakes on things, because some of our bowlers are at 6, 7 and over. So he definitely needs some kind of input, and it certainly doesn't appear that he's getting a lot.
Yeah, I mean, just back to Shane Watson for a second. He was, if you've heard him on commentary, he's extremely articulate, and isn't it funny how you get a mental impression of a cricketer from the way they behave on the pitch, which often is really, directly contrary to their ability to think things through, and vice versa, actually. Sometimes the most brilliant cricketers can be purely instinctive and not really have a calculating brain. One thinks of Andrew Flintoff, I suppose, in that regard, who, when he's in the commentary box, is all over the place and doesn't seem to have anything to add. But sorry, I pivoted a little bit there from Joe Root. Yes, look, agreed. But when was the last time there was any infrastructure to help an England captain? I mean, has there ever been an infrastructure to help an England captain? Really? And very often these England captains emerge as the obvious candidate because they're the best batsmen, and England aren't alone there. They may not have captained a team since their schoolboy days because they've been playing under a captain. Just because you're very good at something doesn't mean you're very good at something else. And the something else of being a brilliant, Test match captain is almost a separate department. You need a degree in psychology. Much more than you need a degree of being brilliant at cricket, and obviously Mike Brady always comes up when you have that conversation.
Well, not least because he wrote the book on it, quite literally.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he is a psychologist. This is the problem, isn't it? That any lack of structure inputting into an England captain shows up when you get somebody who's not necessarily a natural at it. So therefore, if you have Strauss, for example, the fact that there may have been a lack of structure doesn't show up anywhere near as much because he was more gifted at the process. Whereas
also, England had a much
better team who could cover any gaps. What you've got at the moment is a captain with seemingly getting very little input, carrying a team that isn't very good. So therefore, every little nuance of what he might do but he doesn't do is massively magnified.
Well, do we think then is that an English problem, or is it a captaincy problem wherever you're thrown into the, if you have greatness thrust upon you anywhere in the world? Is it, in cricketing terms, is it the same everywhere?
Look, I'd say so. I would imagine that there would be much better captains in the second 11s of county cricket somewhere who could, much more imaginative captains probably, but much more limited in terms of their cricketing abilities. That's just the way the world is. I mean, what great thinking captains of England had, I suppose. And Hussein and Vaughan weren't at all bad. You'd probably say that Cook and Root have been pretty straight-jacketed. Strauss, somewhere in between. Atherton, somewhere in between. Apart from Brearley, I mean, even with Australia, hugely, Michael Clarke was known for some of his funkiness.
Yeah.
But, apart from, I suppose, someone like Richie Beno could go back all the way 60 years as someone who was a deep-thinking captain, really, really good at it. But, Mark Taylor, Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting, it's more the force of personality and the charisma of the leader in the dressing room, which carries all before them, that they're hugely respected. So everybody just falls into line rather than being a brilliant tactician, usually.
Well, or you set a strategy that you're known for. I mean, you can look, you mentioned Michael Vaughan. Okay, nobody's Mr. Popular.
Indeed.
But, 2005, I think started with a T20 victory, which was, whether it was true at the time or retrospectively seen as, a psychological advantage gained, and he always maintains that he set out to achieve precisely that. If you look at Steve Waugh, was it Steve Waugh and mental disintegration?
Yeah.
That was possibly the start of the Aussie aggressiveness that arguably ended up going too far. When it reached its peak in the stairwell and sandpaper. But yeah, as somebody says, which I'm assuming is Knackle, name good captains of mediocre teams. I think.
Well, I would perhaps put forward Stephen Fleming at times, who had an average New Zealand team, was an excellent captain.
Good shout. Mm-hmm. Good shout. I mean, let's face it. From an English point of view, whenever you discuss these things, Brearley is always raised because he was, extraordinary. So extraordinary, in fact, that he didn't really do anything else for England other than exactly. His team, because
never scored a Test century.
He never made many runs. But the problem is, therefore, when you're measuring captains, you always go back to Brearley.
Yeah.
And he is the vast exception. So therefore, there's a chasm between him and anyone else. But we hold everybody else to that level, that standpoint, that pinnacle, and that creates a massive amount of pressure.
Well, funnily enough, I'd say that England did have a couple of quite shrewd captains in Ray Illingworth and Tony Gregg.
I was going to recite Ray Illingworth a minute or two ago, Yeah,
Illingworth conjured a 2-0 series win in 50 years ago down under with a team of sort of battle-hardened, gnarly fellas like, Boycott and Luckhurst and Edrich. And it was a masterpiece of, tough Yorkshire strategizing that got them over the line. There's definitely more than one way of being a captain as well. As you're saying, Tony, that was the Illingworth way, wasn't it?
Very much so. We should tell people that the umpires are currently in the middle. 10:30 local time is the point at which something resembling play will need to have recommenced. So we've got another 40 minutes before we reach that point. And I should tell you that Roger Melly has sent us a message, which on Twitter, which was for that series with Brad Bloody Haddin a few years ago. Over the totality of the series, the bottom 5 Australian wickets scored more runs than the top 5.
There you
One
are.
of the more odd cricket statistics. To be fair, for a while, since Alistair Cook retired, of course, England have had that issue. You know, the lower middle order has been bailing out the top order failings. It was interesting to hear Harrison talking on an interview which I caught on another channel, but he had been very much sort of, he's gone very much now to his point, stating Test cricket is the thing we need to focus on. We've neglected it. We need to give it its pride of place amongst white ball cricket.
Amazing!
Revelation. Yeah,
a light bulb moment.
I have to say, I increasingly see the parallels between our government leadership and our ECB leadership when I hear the kind of too little, too late bollocks like that.
I'm tempted to say that's even harsh on Mr. Harris, but there you go.
It probably is. It probably is. So the umpires are in the middle. There is frustration aplenty, I think, at the Bell Reeve because, or the Blunston, whatever you want to call it. Largely because it is, somebody said it's easier to spot the moths flying in front of the cameras than it is to spot the rain. However, it's a damp outfield.
I was delighted by a reference to Colin Blunston, of course, earlier in the day.
Oh, did you hear
lead singer of the Zombies. She's not there. Caroline No.
Yes.
And while we're pivoting for a moment, the Zombies' greatest album, Odyssey and Oracle, well known for having one of those great albums that had a spelling mistake in the title. They managed to misspell Odyssey, which I always think takes...
to misspell, though, isn't it?
Well, but if it was the title of your album, you'd think someone might have just double-checked. But there we are. That's
Maybe
Colin
they thought
Blunston.
it would sell more if they spelt it wrong.
Well, I suppose in some ways more memorable, the fact they managed to misspell their own album title. Oasis had Standing on the Shoulder of Giants as one of their album titles. Not sure why it wasn't a plural, but it wasn't.
Odyssey, of course, one of Homer Simpson's finest works. Fantastic.
Yes,
well, always worth the read.
That reminds me, I had to read that in Greek once, one Christmas holiday. It's a good read, actually, the Odyssey. It's an odd read, but it's a good one. Better than the Iliad in many ways.
Well, didn't think we'd be discussing that as we're looking at whether or not play will recommence.
The Odyssey and the Iliad, yeah.
We're into Greek mythology.
The things we get into on guerrilla cricket, I don't know.
Well, Travis Head. Let's go back to Travis Head very quickly. I'm just checking notes just to see if there's any sign of play. We're still waiting to hear what the umpires conferring in the middle will bring us.
I'm looking at a vast tarpaulin that's still spread over the centre.
Yeah, no, I rather fear that is the case. I'll tell you something else I was reading, which was very interesting. Oh, go on, will you first, Forthy?
Well, I'll tell you a very quick one. Someone in the PR department in Australian cricket has done a big job in the last week trying to rehabilitate David Warner by pairing him off with Buzzy. And they won't shut up about it. Oh, these two old friends, when they used to, hit the ball up against the garage wall when they were youngsters. And there's obviously been a massive effort to try and... Davey Warner, he's a great guy, really. He hangs out with people who aren't entirely white and things like that, It's a big PR campaign, lots of tweeting, lots of Instagram. And it almost made me think for a minute, perhaps Davey Warner isn't so bad after all.
Look,
I must admit.
Every good tour has to have its pantomime villain. And, or every good test series has to have its heroes and it has to have its pantomime villain. So we should.
If Warner's playing in it, it'll always be him. Yeah.
Well, not always, but certainly it's it's in there. I think you'd probably have maybe Smith and Labuschagne as the ugly sisters. Not effective for sure, but not necessarily pretty in their delivery of what they do.
To be fair to Warner, he plays up to the role very well.
He does actually.
I don't think he really minds it at all. I mean, I think back to the World Cup and a game at Old Trafford between the West Indies and South Africa. He was fielding on the boundary and getting absolute pelts, and he was basically turning to the crowd after almost every ball and milking it, and still wandering into the crowd and signing autographs and smiling away and all the rest of it. So he wasn't remotely bothered by it. He was quite happy to play the role.
Well, I remember my friends in Sydney who stand around the barrel of bullshit in the old Sydney Pavilion there. Yeah, they said even round here no one really likes it.
Although perversely,
members at Sydney at New South Wales telling you that.
It's funny though, because I've got an Aussie mate who claims that we get David Warner all wrong, that he's a guy from the wrong side of the tracks, and that we should understand his background. And I can't remember the details. Grew up in a car with a single mother and all that kind of narrative. So we should cut him significant slack, and he's actually a great family guy who's overcome great disadvantages in life. So there's always another way of looking at it, I guess.
Well, absolutely there is. There's every pantomime villain has their backstory. So a couple of pieces of news. There is over in Cape Town, 41 needed by South Africa, still just the 3 wickets down. You'd probably put a decent amount of money on them doing that, though, if not your house. There appears to be some movement on the covers, and we have some messages which I can relate to you now. Cricket Connoisseur is saying farcical scenes in Hobart. A supposed rain delay, only person with an umbrella up is one of the umpires. The usual contempt for paying public. This great game needs to be dragged kicking and screaming into the modern age and realise the duty of care it has to fans. I think that's a very fair point. Mog, in his finest literary criticism mode, says, I must agree, the Odyssey is better than the Iliad. Achilles is a whiny turd. So I don't recall ever reading that when I was doing my A-levels, but there you go. Ravinair, lovely to hear 40 discussing title mistakes under the aegis Guerrilla Cricket. Nestler says, my mate often meets Warner on walks in Sydney. Says he seems a nice guy. For context, my mate is not a cricket fan, and at first had no idea who he was until people asked him for his autograph.
Yeah. I thought he was going to say, for context, my mate is a convicted murderer. So.
I was actually... Normally I will pre-read
steady
just to know what's coming. I thought it's Nestler, so it's not going to be anything that bad. So I was kind of expecting the same thing as well, I've got to admit.
Actually, we've got a note from Knuckle saying Warner was instrumental in pushing for the increased pay deal that saw Australia's domestic women's cricketers get paid properly for the first time. So it's a multi-layered story.
You can't be all bad then.
You see what you want to see in people, don't you? First impressions probably count. Did I spot a positive tweet from Ravi there, by the way? Yes, we get plenty of them.
I wondered if he'd been drinking or something of that nature. But
no, he's evenly balanced. He has a chip on each shoulder.
Simon and Garfunkel, wasn't it? Tony and John. A man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest.
Very good. Very good.
Is it from the Boxer?
Yes, it is indeed.
Stands a boxer.
I had to sing it in my head before I got to that part of the lyric to remember which.
He's breaking out the song now.
It's got a tremendously loud drum smash on that, isn't it? Why did I?
Yes, indeed.
A raised hand from Knuckle.
Are we lapsing into your podcast accidentally?
No, not at all. I wouldn't.
No, Knuckle's just playing the drum.
Oh, he's playing the drum.
He's playing the drum from the song.
Yeah. I could see Knuckle as a drummer somehow.
And entering into the spirit, he is.
Possibly more sort of animal from the Muppets than Phil Collins, but there we go.
He was based on Animal from the Muppets was based on Keith Moon, of course.
Well, yes, poor old Keith Moon. Sadly, it fits into the character. It wasn't there. Was it a Terry Wogan or Michael Parkinson when he was on the same show as Oliver Reed? I mean, if ever there was a pair of interviewees,
oh my god,
made for one another. Well, maybe I'm dreaming that. Maybe that only ever happened in my head because it probably should have.
Yeah.
But I
it's an early morning fever dream.
I have a recollection. A reminder of where we stand, by the way. It's 241 for 6. Australia, England, 20 for not many. 3 or 4 for not many. But Travis Head, wow, 101 for him. And Cameron Green, 74. Taken the game to a point where England are in it, I think we'd agree, but the scales have tilted Australia's way. Would that be a fair summary, do we think, guys?
Yeah, I think given the context of the series and the way that the England batting has performed, you would have to, the expectation would have to be that Australia are in front at this point, I think.
And no surprise at all if 240 for 6 ends up at 375 all out, or even worse.
Well, the worry, of course, England will also have is Ollie Robinson, who's been nurtured and protected since we saw so much of Root. No Anderson, because he appears to be happily doing the Times crossword, concentrating on something that we keep seeing shots of him furrowed in concentration, looking down at something that's either his contract to go to the West Indies, which he hasn't decided to take up yet, or a crossword or something else. He might be reading, the Odyssey. Who knows?
He might be, or the Iliad. We don't know. That'd be fantastic if he was.
If he was, wouldn't that be a fantastic? Just imagine if he'd sort of taken 8 for 27, and your opening question as you get him in front of those sort of sponsors screens on pitch after the matches. So, which do you feel is better, Jimmy? The Iliad or the Odyssey? I'm sure he'd have a point of view.
Restart in 15 minutes.
We do have a restart in 15 minutes.
Yay!
I think it's me and Tony. We're carrying on, and I think Messers is joining.
Messers is jumping in.
Messers is jumping in for me. Yes, he is indeed.
Cheers, John. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys. And,
it is. I'm loving the hairdressing, John.
I am.
Messers, see me jump.
Hello, Messers.
Hello, Messers.
Hello. This is.
Are you plugged in? You're not plugged in.
Sorry. Either that, or you're broadcasting from the bottom of a well.
It's like one of those recurring themes in Two Ronnie's sketch, isn't it? You're not plugged in, Missy. There he is.
Yes, it is, 40.
You're muted.
Oh God! Oh dear me.
Right, I need to stop my. Why is it all the emails I get these days appear to be either about erectile dysfunction or planning my funeral? That is just so depressing. I've now stopped them as much as I can.
I think that was a little too much information there, Sam.
I don't invite them. Somebody is just profiling my age and going, "Oh, here's 2 things that are clearly going to be top of Mr. Bishop's mind."
Is this
and getting buried?
Is this an appeal for us to send you more emails as real people?
Well, no, I get them. I normally get them 5 minutes before we go on air, going, "Oh, sorry, I've just accidentally shut my finger in the door, or I've got a meeting I just didn't realise I had, or all sorts of things." I've upset poor old Jack today.
Well done.
Although
you've upset him.
Well, not really. No, we figured out it was my fault. I got the email yesterday from Jack. I sent out the different days, and Jack had replied with a big thing on the top saying day 5, and of course I'd already got my head squarely into the first day by that point. So when he said I've got a meeting, I've got a meeting, I'm actually chairing it, I've screwed up. I assumed he wasn't available for this day, and actually he's thinking about the mythical land and the mythical and highly unlikely land of day 5. So poor old Jack missed out today.
He's also
I actually have a wibble point for us, which we sort of missed out of because it happened and then we went off air. But Channel 7 at this moment are replaying the last 2 overs of the last Test match, and I'm just wondering what the impact is in the UK. Do you think of the fact that was drawn and not lost? I mean, I think from an Australian perspective, there's a general view that that's fantastic for cricket. I don't think anybody begrudged England the draw, and it's just part of the drama of the whole thing. I'm just wondering if there's any noticeable impact in terms of the feeling in England, generally speaking.
Sorry, run that one by me again.
Well, the impact of the fact that England hung on for the draw in the last Test match, and whether that's had any ramifications in terms of people feeling slightly less bad about themselves, but also just sort of liking cricket a little better.
I think inside the England camp, I would expect most definitely, because they really rather needed it. I think externally, as a moment of pure theatre, as a cricket fan, any backs to the wall, will they hold out for a draw? Doesn't matter if the series is gone. That is fantastic sport. And it's one of the beautiful things about Test cricket, is that it can exist like that. I think people will also look on it and think it was a overly generous declaration. Pat Cummins went on for 70-80 runs too much. That is a very understandable, overcautious declaration. And it would have been another defeat but for that. And I don't think it's papered over any cracks in terms of any thinking that England's hierarchy, if they can find someone who's actually chairman of England's hierarchy, remember part of the problem at the moment is there isn't one. So even if they want to reorganise, they can't figure out who does the reorganising. So I don't think it will paper over any cracks. It was a moment, though, of to savour, was how I would think.
I think just in how wonderful Test cricket is for me. I think it just brings that home.
I think for old-time aficionados like ourselves, we absolutely, one of our dreams is to is to have the last pair at the crease, and it's probably it might have been Jimmy Anderson's last thing he ever does in Australia, play that ball out. It might be the last ball that Steve Smith bowls in an Ashes series. So there's always those sort of bigger stories going on as well. It's quite different though from say Cardiff 09 when it was the first Test of the series. Everything was so underlined.
Well,
it could have gone both ways.
No, it had an impact on the series. Let me catch up with a few messages, although I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do it. I think you've taken that responsibility. Shall I just finish these off and you'll pick up on their message?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Brian in Brisbane says, in all jest, it looks like the Three Stooges on air.
Thanks, Brian.
Was that before or after I came on?
Well, I don't know. I think to be fair, before. Arnak Nud says, erectile dysfunction and funerals. You'll be stiff either way. Simon Q says, Oliver Rood. He was rude occasionally. Oliver Reed and Keith Moon were good mates. Yes, they were. Right, let me see. Mog says it's 4 days of gore and gutting. That's true. Nestlers says let's not forget Knuckles' famous air guitar video clip. Yes, to go with his drumming, I suspect. Hombre Nuevo says Moon moved in next door to Reed and first arrived in a helicopter, scaring Reed's horses. So Oliver Reed charged Moon's helicopter with a broadsword, and they became best friends thereafter. That is, if I read all the biography of Moon, dear boy.
Well, who hasn't done that?
Well, no, indeed not. Rabinair says, yes, I want the county cricket system to be torn down and replaced with something fit for purpose. Yeah, that's a well-worn hobby horse of rabbits for sure. James Humberstone says maybe Anderson is joining in the Wordle craze. Yes, he may be.
It doesn't take that long.
See, cricket connoisseur, some fun trivia while we wait for the restart. Former Australian batsman Greg Ritchie set what type of animals loose in the team dressing room on the 1984 tour of Zimbabwe? So if anyone
This sounds like a mastermind question on the subject of Greg Ritchie, his life and times.
I've started, so I'll finish. So, for all of us listening out there, let me repeat that question, just in case because I'm now fascinated to actually know what the answer is. It is, former Australian batsman Greg Ritchie set what type of animals loose in the team dressing room on the 1984 tour of Zimbabwe? I wonder if the country's a clue. What would be?
Well, that's why I said monkeys. I mean,
yes. You were thinking lions.
Well, you're not going to do wildebeests in the dressing room, are you?
It's a tight fit.
They're all sweeping majestically through the Australian
dressing plain. Indeed, yes.
A reminder once more: 5 minutes, we believe, until. Oh no, it isn't anymore.
The covers
are going back on. The fourth umpire has his umbrella back up. The full covers are going up. The drizzle is steady. We needed to start by 10:30 Hobart time, 11:30 UK time, wherever it is for you, if you're listening somewhere in the world.
I'll tell you,
I have a nasty feeling it ain't looking good.
I'll tell you a symbol of how the world has moved on for the better is that Greg Ritchie, Messi will definitely know this, and Tony, you probably will know this, used to appear as this sort of comedy segment on the highlights, I think it was, of the Australian Day at the Cricket, with a jokey segment where he was dressed head to toe as a Maharaja, all blacked up, and he was. Did you know that? And he was known as Mahatma Coat.
God.
No, I'm afraid it's true. Don't shoot the messenger. This is.
No.
You can find it. You'll be able to find it online. That's Greg Ritchie.
Totally believe.
That's not that long ago. Well, Richie Benno used to have to stand there and say, "And now over to Mahatma Coat."
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I know it's as bad as the Scottish butler, isn't it, Angus McCota? Simon Q.
It's rather worse.
Simon Q. Answers zebra. I mean, how many zebras could you get in a dressing room? I mean, I've been in. Funny enough, it sounds like an awful name drop. Only because I did the tour, but I have been in the dressing rooms at the MCG. They are pretty big. But put 2 or 3 zebras in there, it'd be a fairly full dressing room. So, but apparently, zebra is the answer.
In Zimbabwe, I would imagine they'd be less huge than the MCG.
It's one of the abiding mysteries that zebras evolved on the African plain with black and white stripes. Well, in what way is that? Is that a great bit of natural camouflage? But it seems to work for them. Got to say,
very handy if you were in Newcastle.
Are we going to go into a segment of 30 Does Science?
Or a barcode factory?
Well, the answer, don't panic, the answer wasn't zebra. The answer is apparently chimps.
Well, monkeys are good enough.
So here is the background to that story from Cricket Connoisseur. He wasn't playing the game due to illness, and met a man who wasn't there. No, I'm thinking of something else. He wasn't playing the game due to illness, and met a man who owned 2 chimps as pets. Ritchie borrowed them and brought them into the ground after the game, causing a huge disturbance in the dressing room. Well, I can imagine it would be. One thing we don't need to imagine, rather sadly, is at Stumps for the day. We are done and dusted, and that, as they say in Looney Tunes, is all, folks. With Australia,
do you know what that means, Tony? That means we'll almost certainly be starting half an hour earlier tomorrow.
Yes, I'm always aware of that, and because we've lost quite a lot of play, it'll be the extra half hour leading into lunch. I'm getting the hang of this now, rota-wise.
I am the Lord of the Rota, said he.
But I can tell you all, wherever you may be, it's an absolute pain in the fucking arse. But anyway,
I think it is time that Forthy and I actually paid tribute to Tony, because for the whole of the series, the weather has fucked around with the road is something shocking, and he has had to wrangle all sorts of stuff with people on WhatsApp and email and text and Christ knows what, and he's done it smiling the whole way. So all I can say is thank you.
I can honestly tell you, I've not had more fun since I last did my tax return. It's been absolutely.
Actually, Tony, you remind me a little bit of Paul McCartney in the Get Back documentary, who's the only one who takes it upon himself. Come on, guys, let's keep going. Let's write some more songs.
I'll take that comparison. Anyway, 241.
The Paul McCartney of Guerrilla Cricket. I would never have thought it, but yeah, we got him penned.
There we go. So long as I'm famous for some, not the frog chorus, but something perhaps more famous, I'd settle for that. 241 for 6 is where the day has finished. Carey on 10. Mitchell Starc yet to score. He prints amongst men, of course, when it comes to bowling figures in day-night tests. I'm not so sure about his batting. We'll give you the quick highlights of the day. David Warner, 22 balls, absolutely got a working over early doors from Broad and Robinson. Couldn't get a run, and after 22 balls was caught Crawley, bowled Ollie Robinson. Khawaja, double centurion in Sydney he may have been, couldn't get himself going today. 26 balls, gone for 6, caught slipped by Root off Broad. Marnus Labuschagne, fastest man to fourth fastest man, am I right, to 2,000 runs in Test cricket. Well, he got 44 today before falling over flat on his face and having his leg stump pinned back by Stuart Broad. Not a good look to be dismissed there. Just 2 balls and a duck for Smith, caught Crawley, bowled Robinson, although Crawley had been guilty of dropping Labuschagne before he got those 44. Travis Head, once more the middle order hero when all looked bleak from an Australian perspective. Enter Travis Head. 101 off 113 balls, full on one-day mode. He caned England to all points of the Blunston Arena, but was finally out, having got past his 100. Caught Robinson, bowled Chris Wokes, and Cameron Green continues to find more members for the Cameron Green Preservation Society because he made 74. Again, caught Crawley, atoning for perhaps for that drop of Labuschagne. Bowled off Wood. Wood's 1 wicket. He was expensive, it must be said. 1 for 79 at nearly 7 and over for him. 2 for 48 for Broad. 2 for 24 for Robinson. 1 for 50 for Chris Wokes. None for 35 for Joe Root. So you can expect that we will most likely be starting half an hour early. Knackle, GPL entries, and anyone make a lucky guess that rain would call an early halt proceedings?
There was one GPL entry from Omran Webo, very early. There was no other, and Omran Webo was only 6 runs away.
Ooh, higher or lower?
Higher.
I don't know if I went.
Don't get anything 6 runs short. Not in this game.
Sublime to the ridiculous. I've gone from Paul McCartney to Bruce Forsyth. I'm not quite sure that's travelling in the right direction.
Dollies, do your dealing.
Oh, God. Right, I think we're reaching the end now. We're onto the dolly dealers. Plucked straight out the 70s. Although that was a bit later than that, wasn't it? So anyway, watch out for details on our Twitter feed, of course. But you can fully expect an early doors start tomorrow by half an hour and some change session times. I shall get beavering on those rotors straight after this. For now, it is a fond farewell to you all from the wonderful Knackle in the studio. Knackle, say goodbye.
Bye.
From the extraordinary Forthy in Melbourne, student of Homer, and from the font of wisdom in Perth.
Well, I have one thing to add.
Oh, go on then.
Today was the day that the 5th test was supposed to be played in Perth. It was a beautiful day today. There is no rain forecast for the next 4 days. I just wish you could have been here in our COVID-free state to play cricket, but never mind.
Well, the reason we're not there is you're COVID-free and it doesn't want to let it in. So, you have to look at both sides of the equation, I think.
That's true.
Anyway, for now, it's thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of Guerrilla Cricket. Thank you for just joining us and having fun with us. We will see you, whatever transpires, tomorrow. Take care.
Bye.
Guerrilla Cricket.